Welcome to those of you joining us online. We're just getting ready to start the discussion portion of our evening. Once again, welcome, and we're going to just come on up front, and if you're getting food, come find a seat and join us. Again, we'll wait on the dishes and such following, and it's just such a delight to welcome tonight once again Bishop Bob Gillies. I'm moving away from the speaker. Can you hear okay? Bobby put up another. Bobby's so great. He added another speaker tonight to make sure that everybody could hear okay, because we were using the speakers that are in the nave, and we want to make sure you can hear. As I said, on your tables are little sheets of paper if you'd like to fill out comments, questions on there. I'll come around and collect those. Do I see any on the tables that have been filled out? Have any on the tables been filled out? Not yet. Okay, so no questions coming in tonight that are on the note cards. I'm going to turn it over to you, Bishop, and there may be some questions that people have brought with them from last week's talk that you want to start with here. Welcome once again.
Thank you indeed, David. And good to be with you, and great to see you all, and to be with those of you taking part online. Last week, I introduced the book of Amos to you, and I shared how cranky an individual he could seem to be, but yet he was giving a warning to people whose faithfulness was diminished, their moral compass was completely skewed, and he was giving a warning that if they didn't repent and make amends for their ways, God would somehow, maybe even using the surrounding armies, come and punish, and the people would be taken away into exile. Well, as time went on, that is pretty well what happened. The people were invaded. The people of the north of Israel, Judah, were taken away into exile. And now, tonight, I'm going to introduce you to the book of Zechariah, because Zechariah is 200 years younger than the book of Amos, and Zechariah speaks of how the people were rebuilding and restoring their home in Jerusalem. And so, although this week, we're tracking our way through Amos still, next week we begin with Zechariah. So it's Zechariah that I'm going to share with you tonight in readiness for next week. Zechariah is a wonderful book. I mean, he's the sort of guy you would invite to your dinner parties. Because, you know, he would say things that you would want to hear, that you would like to hear. It would be really terrific. And he'd come along, would you believe, with lots of good stories. Now, everybody likes someone who tells good stories. So I've got about 5 here tonight. So, here we go. And these particular stories pick up images, pick up examples that are in the book of Zechariah itself. Now, you'll see where this is going in a minute, but let me tell you about what you would call, I think, your front yard. In Britain, we call it a garden. Okay. There's a little wall holding back about that much of dirt. We call it soil. Okay, it's holding it all back. Now this particular wall was getting really wobbly. You could do that with it and it would move. So the builder arrived to not just to fix it, but completely rebuild it. So he took it all down, took the original one down, got it all thrown away, and he put concrete in as a foundation. And along came his bricks, and he started putting the bricks on top of the cement foundation. And as he was going up, maybe about second line of bricks, he put a plumb line in place. Now, do you know what a plumb line is? Yeah. Lead weight on a string, hang it down, and a builder can tell that a wall is going up straight simply by aligning it next to the bricks that are going up. He also had a magic one which was a laser, and that would shine a light all the way along the length of the wall. So he didn't just have to use his eyes, he could see if something was off center with the laser. Anyway, you see how this relates to Zechariah in just a minute. Be patient online, it's coming. So, Zechariah writes in chapter 2 of seeing how a measuring line is coming down from heaven. It's an imaginary story that Zechariah is telling, because we have no evidence that an actual plumb line came down from heaven. But that's his imaginary way of saying, you people are being restored, you people are being rebuilt. You have come back to your homeland. Everything is going for you. The plumb line is against you to make sure that what you are rebuilding in your community life, in your personal life, is true and not going off either way. So that's an easy image that Zechariah gives, the plumb line to test the people's faithfulness, truthfulness, right conduct, everything. But, you know, there is a little bit more, because he also applies the image of the plumb line horizontally, if I may say. And here's where I'll tell you a little bit about a priest who came to my former diocese. She was actually from San Francisco, but she came to work in one of our churches. Sadly died 2 or 3 years ago, but a quite remarkable and wonderful priest. And she defined herself in terms of where her family had originally come from. And she said, her name was Jønsson, E-U-N-S-O-N, Jønsson. It's a Norwegian name. She said, my great-grandparents were Jønssons of Fair Isle. Now, Fair Isle is a remote island 30 miles off the Shetland coast. Now, Shetland is they're not remote, but they are a long way north. I mean, they're nearer to Norway than they were to my former cathedral in Aberdeen. So really a long way north, and Fair Isle is one of the most remote islands in the United Kingdom. But her great-grandparents had left Fair Isle and had settled in the western US. So, although she was right down the line, US citizen, she nonetheless described herself as a Jønsson of Fair Isle. Now, in the cemetery on Fair Isle, there are 2 historic families. David, don't go away. Come back. I haven't finished. He doesn't know what's coming. I do. Right. So there. Well done. So there are 2 extended families whose graves are in the cemetery on Fair Isle. One set of names is Jønsson. So that was her heritage. Her plumb line horizontally. That, not only was she straight down the line, plumb line vertical, but horizontally, if you can imagine a horizontal plumb line. I know it's ridiculous, but you know what I'm saying. She was a Jønsson of Fair Isle. Now, question. What do you think is the name of the other historic family network in the cemetery in Fair Isle? Stout. Who said it? Yeah.
Are you a Stout of Fair Isle?
You could be a Stout of Fair Isle, David. Wendy, Richard, thank you very much indeed. Okay, so let me ask those of you, I don't quite know the right way to do this, so forgive me if I get it wrong. But those of you who are historic Hawaiians, does that sound familiar with what I've just said? You know, would you say you are, I don't know, a people from whatever part of the island, this island or the other? I mean, let me just hold back a minute whilst you... Can you give me an example that I can tell the people online, maybe?
My granddaughter is a Kai'awe, and they are a North Kohala and now a Kona family.
Good. Did you pick that up online?
1, 2.
No, I didn't think the mic was going. Sorry, the mic wasn't going, but... okay, David, just go back to that so that we can get it online. And may get 1 or 2 contributions from others as well.
Real quick. Don't be shy.
Thanks. My granddaughter is a Kai'awe, K-A-I-A-W-E, and they are historically a Kohala family affiliated with Kamehameha I.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. So there's a linear heritage. Somebody else, go on. Coming down here, here's the microphone.
My mother is a Lindsay from here in Waimea, and her great-grandfather came from England.
Ah,
And,
right.
And her mother was from here, so, Kaimana. So the Lindsays and the Hawaiians, intermarried.
Thank you for that. And any one other who is, as it were, Hawaiian by heritage? Yeah, David, behind you.
Oh, where?
I'll take this.
Mapuana.
I'll take this as the third one, and then I'll move on because I see there's one question coming forward on paper. Please,
Okay. Mine is a little bit more complex.
go on.
My Hawaiian lineage comes from my grandmother,
Yeah.
and she traveled the South Pacific with my grandfather. They left the islands about 1908, 1905. They had children around the South Pacific. So my mother was born in Nuku'alofa, Tonga. And when she was 5 years old, they came back here. The last name is Kepa. I don't know what area that Kepa family is from because there are many Kepas in the island. I have not
Yeah.
found the trace on that genealogy yet.
Good. Right, so when you come to the passage in Zechariah chapter 2, I think it is, next week, and you read about the plumb line, see it as a true measure of faithfulness, but also as reflecting the lineage and the heritage from where you have each come. Two questions have come in, or comments maybe. It says, all 3 major religions' locations were hijacked. The Muslim Temple Mount is not the location of the Jewish temple. No, indeed it isn't. It was the historic location, as I understand it, where Abraham was to sacrifice Isaac. It was the site where I think the first 3 temples were built, but now there are 2 major and significant mosques on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Al-Aqsa, I think, is the one, and Al-Aqsa, and the Dome of the Rock is the other. Yeah, it's a huge, fantastic area, and I walked the Temple Mount in Jerusalem with my mother, and she was seriously lame, needing hip operation. And sad it was that the Israelis, whilst we were on there, closed down the access, and we had to find a different way off. And the Palestinian Muslims on the Temple Mount were extraordinarily helpful to us. It's a personal memory. Right, I'll move on now. That was the first image from Zechariah. And I've got another one. This is what I think is in next Wednesday's reading about filthy clothes. Zechariah has an image of the high priest in the temple that was being restored about 500-600 BC, in filthy clothes. And behind him is Satan. And the image that Zechariah draws is of this high priest being controlled by Satan behind him. And with the filthy clothes is a symbol of Satan's control. So what Zechariah does in that image from next Wednesday's reading is to banish Satan away. And then Joshua is dressed with fine, elegant clothes. Like the image of the measuring line, it is very powerful because it portrays how evil is filthy when it is controlled by a power beyond oneself. God forgives our sinfulness. Wrongdoing and the cause of wrong can and be banished away. And it's like the person who is, if you like, controlled by a power beyond themselves. It could indeed be Satan. It could be social conditioning. It could be political oppression, whatever. That person can be pictured as wearing filthy clothes. But when that oppression is done away with, then they're bright, light, and things are good. And their clothes no longer are filthy, but are bright light in every way. Now, that's not to be taken literally, but you can take it literally. And here's a particular example of it. How am I doing for time? I'll keep going fast. In one of my former congregations, it had shrunk to 6 people. The organist, her son, his girlfriend, an aged priest who was blind, and a man and wife who were basically the stalwarts of the congregation. I could not work out in my mind why this church was always so filthy. It was what we call in Scotland minging. It was minging. Do you have the word minging? No. Well, it was I'm minging with Stour. Stour. Ugh. That's Stour. Okay, get the idea? A ledge that's covered in grease and filth and the whole place was minging. The carpet, even though they had a cleaner, he was the husband of the organist. The carpet was an absolute mess. The flowers behind the high altar, the water had been there for at least 3 to 4 weeks every time I visited. It was minging. You get the idea. You don't need it translated, do you? And in the little coffee room area that they had side of the church, stuff was gathering in from the walls. You know, there's very little room in the middle because there was, as I said to them, there's no space and light in here for the Spirit of God to move and to breathe. Everything was being... And then I got a report from the chap who was the, what I said, the stalwart of the congregation. He said, on Christmas Day, this was about December the 28th, the organist, her son and his girlfriend were reciting satanic incantations during the consecration prayer. He said, leave it with him and his wife and the priest who was blind, the lady priest. I mean, she was one of the most holy women I've ever come across. A remarkable lady, but she was blind. So she couldn't see what was happening around. This is Stromness in Orkney. I've gone public on this story before, so I'm quite content to share it. He said, we'll deal with it locally. So she, that's the priest, the man and his wife prayed through the letter of Ephesians, and all went well for a few weeks. Same thing happened after Easter Sunday. The satanic incantations again. So I said, enough. And I wrote to those 3 people. I said, I have had a serious report about what happened on Sunday morning. The 3 of you are now out of this congregation. You have a right of appeal. I had to say that, didn't I? They do. But I put them out of the congregation. I said, if you do appeal, the rector of Kirkwall, that's a neighbouring parish, will come and visit you. That would be enough to frighten them. And I said, and if you're not content with that, after he's visited, I will come. I didn't threaten the next bit. The next bit would have been legal action, because we're not having that in any church. And then the lady priest, she had a cancer and she died. So that left the man and his wife as members of the congregation. And I said to them, through the winter, that by now we'd got to August, September, through the winter that is to come, I just want the 2 of you to turn up every Sunday at the appointed hour to say morning prayer and receive any visitors who might happen to turn up. They did. And then the following year, a friend of mine, David's as well, from New York Cathedral retired. So I sent him a letter saying I could think of no better preparation than someone who's just retired from one of the world's biggest churches to come to one of the world's smallest. Long story short, that church was completely transformed, restored, rebuilt. They changed everything inside, even the flooring, the east wall, everything was changed. The organ was thrown out too. And his appointment was one of the best things I ever did as a bishop. I say that, not sparing his blushes, and he could even be listening now. I'll pause. You've had a long session from me there. I do have more to say, but let me just give you a chance just to catch your breath and to give voice to any particular question that you might have. David here.
Wait 1 second, David.
Temple.
Let me hold.
That question about the Temple Mount was for me because the original temple, or at least the one that was previous to the destruction by the Romans, was within the in the limits of the city of David. The Muslim temple on the Temple of the Rock is not inside the city of David. That was at the time the Romans were there, that was where the palace of Antonio and his regiment, which is the only place big enough to hold a regiment of Roman soldiers, was kept up on top of that mount.
Yeah, and it overlooks the Temple Mount, yeah. Now, your understanding of the Temple Mount is, I respect, greater than mine, so I'm not going to sit with that at the minute. I'm just going to acknowledge your contribution and say, yeah, thank you. But I've only got 10 minutes to go, so if you bear with me, I'll give the space to somebody else who might want to ask a question.
Worshipping at the Western Wall or worshipping Antonio?
Well, I'm not going to go there at all, because I want to honor their faith as well. Now, anybody got a particular question?
But doesn't that also apply to one's home?
What?
Home, where you live. This spiritual presence.
Indeed, indeed. And not just, God's presence isn't just in the home. One's body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. So it goes within the individual and the person as well. Okay, I will truck on. Now, Zechariah has another image, and that is the image of the shoulder. A shoulder is a powerful image. I forget which day it is coming in next week, because a shoulder can do two things. Now, in my early days as a priest, about 42 years ago, I was a junior curate in a parish in central Scotland, in Falkirk. And I got a call because there was a guy really, really ill in one of the wards. And I arrived just as visiting time was happening. And there were streams of people walking down the central lobby of this hospital. And in amongst them, I spotted this guy's wife. She saw me, and she just threw her arms around my neck and sobbed her heart out. Now, in central Scotland 42 years ago, you didn't do that. So there I was, dog collar the lot, there was no hiding. She sobbed her heart out, literally on my shoulder. That's an example of a shoulder for support. But there are other examples of a shoulder. David, you could go one side of a door, I could go the other side, and we could each push against each other. You could be trying to open the door, I'd be trying to keep it closed. The shoulder can be used to resist. Depends how you view it, depends the intention. But that's, so when you come to Zechariah next week, see how the shoulder can be used in two different ways. The next one, stopped up ears. That's another example that Zechariah gives. Stopped up ears. In a recent vestry meeting at a church back in Scotland, there's a vacancy, so the interim priest came along and he looked at the inside of the church and he said, where half the pews have been taken out and half haven't. And he said, are you going to take out the rest of the pews? Now, in Britain, if you want to create a national riot, you suggest taking pews out of churches. Because pews are partly where people worship, but more fundamentally, they are the castles that they defend. So, and one member of the congregation said, you better not poke that bear. What he was actually doing, if I can sort of edge underneath the veneer, is say, don't talk about it. He was shutting down conversation. It could have been a good conversation, one way or the other. But he was saying, don't even begin. So stopped up ears, that can be an example of it, where conversation, good conversation, is inhibited. And then the next is a stony heart, where, somebody said. One has to feel sad when you encounter someone who is caustic and unkind in their attitude. I left school at 16, and for the first 4 years of my working life, I went to work in the pathology lab of the local hospital in Grimsby. And you're not from Grimsby, are you? No. Oh, no, right, that's a relief. I was going to abandon that story if you were. And the pathologist I worked to was one of the most wickedly unkind, aggressive individuals I've ever come across. Sad and unkind it is to say it, but he was, both in what he said and by the manner in which he said it, a stony heart. Well, worse than Scrooge, but yeah, but that sort of thing. So, Amos is offering a picture of rebuilding and restoring. Okay, I hear the bell. I've got a minute to go. In the rebuilding of the Jerusalem temple. And it's all set against Amos's prophecy that things were going to go bad. But they're being restored, rebuilt. The measuring line, the plumb line image to make sure everything was intact. The image of being reclothed from filthy rags to rich vestments. obstacles named as those which inhibit God's will, stubbornness, stopped up ears, and cold hearts. And Zechariah was speaking 2,500 years ago. He could have been speaking today. David, 8 seconds to go, just like last week. But my apologies, I didn't stop for questions along the way. I do apologize for that. But write the questions down that you would have wanted to ask had I not been on a racetrack for you. Yeah, I can tell, David, I can tell.
Bishop, thank you. Final comments, words, thoughts? Anything you wish to ask Bishop Harry?
No, I was going to congratulate you, sir, because I've never had a liturgical lesson go from A to Z so quickly.
Good one, Harry.
I guess you picked that up online, yep.
The church that was so dirty.
Yeah.
Well, didn't it say something in the Bible about cleanliness is godliness? Or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that?
Now
Yeah.
that
So God couldn't have been in that church if it was
Monique, that is incredibly
dirty like that.
astute. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
The word was cleanliness being next to godliness. And when Satan was banished away, then the high priest moved from filthy rags to clean, bright clothes. Certainly clean, if not bright. Godliness is next to cleanliness, or the other way around. Thank you, Monique. That's very powerful. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Your thoughts reminded me, I was thinking of blessings that we do here in Hawaii, and some of the teachers that I've had, kumus that have taught me how to try to honor some of the traditions here in the most authentic way that I can do, coming from outside to here, are different than the way I was taught to do blessings where I came from. And one of the things that I've so come to appreciate in just asking, like yesterday, to be invited to bless the opening of a store is not only the asking for God's grace, the anointing of God's Spirit to be present in this place, but also the cleansing of it. And the banishing of any unclean spirit, anything that doesn't bring health and wholeness, any evil residue. And that has been such a powerful learning experience to me in the culture here to come to understand. It's not only asking God's grace and blessing in this moment, but banishing that which is not of God. And that has been such a moving experience, and to take that into our own lives of how we ask for God's grace to come, but also to ask for anything that is not of God to be gone.
David, well done. Thank you. Thank you.
That is the foundation for Ho'oponopono.
Yeah.
And I think
Wait.
For those of you online, there's some Hawaiian coming up now.
David, what you have just said is the foundation for Ho'oponopono, which, Bishop, would be a concept that we should probably help you understand.
Please do, yeah.
Do you want to say another word? Or?
No.
Okay. Okay. We'll save that for next week. All right.
I'll tell you what, next week I'll sit down there, you can all come up here, and you can tell me.
You can come with your Q&A.
Yeah, you come with your Q&A. All right. We're going to pull us in for this evening, and I'll be mindful of next week that we have perhaps started a little quicker. That was me, and so we have more time to ask you. But Bishop and Liz are here till the 21st. So don't be shy in coming up and speaking to them separately, individually. And if you've got questions that you would rather ask, maybe not in a group setting, but to just have a moment, I know they'd be exceedingly open to. And again, Bishop will be at Beach Mass and at St. Columbus this weekend. Let's close in prayer. Who's anybody feeling the Spirit moving them right in this moment?
In Hawaiian?
Yeah. Do you want to do Ho'onani? Yes, let's sing Ho'onani. How about we stand? Ho'onani. If you need to leave, go. I know that some folks have a long, dark distance to go, and they have perhaps somewhere first thing in the morning to be, and they need their beauty rest. So go. If you can stay a bit, tables stay up because of community meal tomorrow. Chairs, most of them can go back, but you can leave a few of them up, but most of them go back. Oh.
That's the seating from St. Columbus.
And if you can help do dishes, that would be great. Although our deacon is back there already at work.